Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to my Lotus Esprit S2. First things first, I want to say a big thank you to Johnny Smith and all the people at the Late Break show. They featured a video of this car on one of their recent Project Cars episodes, and I'm grateful for the exposure and the interest in this car. So if you've come from that channel and you're looking at my Lotus for the first time on this channel, then welcome to the madness. For people who haven't seen the Late Break show, then I'll put a link to their channel in this vid and you can go check it out. Lots of varied car content on there. So back in the Lotus, working on it again, and in the last week or so I've continued a little bit with the interior strip. One of the things I removed was this header rail, if that's what it's called, with the sun visors on it and the digital clock. And I was kind of thinking what's next to do with this car, what's the next step, and I thought what would be quite good is to start getting the wiring loom out of the car, so sort of working from front to back, getting the wiring loom out. But I ran into a little bit of a problem, and I'll show you that in the front boot area. So in the front boot area you have all the connections for the lights and things, and there's a load of relays which I started taking off down here. But as I traced the loom back towards the bulkhead, I noticed that in this section there's loads of I presume are earth wires which are connected to the chassis beneath, because this is a fiberglass body car, remember, so you can't just earth on the body, you have to find sort of the mounting points to the chassis for that earth to work. And as I was turning this bolt to undo it to get these earth connections off, I found that it's not a captive nut in the chassis, it's actually a bolt on the other side that's holding it in, and it's quite tricky to get to the other side of that, well, without jacking up in the air, and being on my driveway of limited space, it's not really the best place to do it. So I think I can get to it if I start to unbolt some of the body panels and exterior trim of the car. And I think that's what I'm going to try and do now. Now, I'd been putting off doing any of the exterior strip because I didn't want like rain and things to get into the car, but I think after running out of things to do inside the car, that's kind of the next logical step anyway, and removing some of these bigger panels is going to feel like bigger progress as well. So yeah, we'll see how we get on. Okay, so it seems like every day is a school day when working on this car, and today's lesson is don't tell people what you're going to try and do before you've done it, because I've achieved precisely, well, almost nothing really. So the objective was to take off this front spoiler here, and it's kind of in two parts. There's the top bit here which you can see, but there's also an under tray which I think acts as also the radiator ducting. And because the front of the car was sitting over a puddle, it seemed, in the garage it was being stored in for 3 decades or so, I think this is where most of the corrosion is probably going to be found. Certainly what I've seen so far, everything is rusty under there, and it seems every fastener that I touch is just rusted to hell. And I think every single fastener I tried to undo on the under tray has snapped, with the exception of one. So when I've got a whole tub of nuts and bolts here, none of them are intact except this one bolt. I don't know what's special about this one, but like one bolt snapping is fine, but once you start getting, because the force it takes to actually snap a bolt isn't massive, but when you're doing several, it does kind of get a bit tiring after a bit. So I mean, okay, so sorry for sounding a bit negative here, but I think it's mainly because I didn't heed my own advice, and that is, if something's not working out too well, then try something else. And I decided the next day to try some what I thought were quick wins. So these plastic trim pieces looked easy enough to get off, and after taking out a rivet and a plastic popper, I discovered that they were held in by double-sided tape. Imagine that, a car that cost as much as a house in the 70s being held together with double-sided tape. Next up was the wing mirrors. These weren't as easy as I thought they were going to be, and the bolts needed to be drilled out that were holding them in. But once the bolt was free, it was easy enough to get the mirrors off, and then the mounting plinth was pretty easy too. Lastly was removing the wiring loom from each of the doors. The passenger side was easy enough, but the driver's side was a bit more tricky because it had a few more wires than the other side, but going through the same sized hole. But that wasn't the worst part of the job. It was the electric window motor housing with the sharp metal edges biting into the back of your hand and the grease lubricating the mechanism, which made it a bit more tricky. It may not be much, but progress is progress, and really that's what I should take away from each week working on this car. Now back to a slightly deflated me. This week's update, but I think this is just, you know, part of the restoration game. You're going to find times when things aren't going to go to plan and just need to plough on. But yeah, I mean, still, you know, such a privilege working on this thing, and I'm learning bits about it every day. The thing I have learned as well about this front spoiler, it seems that the bolts holding it to the upper part of the body might even be in these captive nuts in the body, but they don't seem to be captive anymore, so I don't know how I'm going to solve that problem. So if anybody knows a way to fix that, then let me know. I might need to get like an angle grinder out or something. Hope you enjoyed this update, what little update I've made, but yeah, I'll see you next time, and thank you very much for watching. Bye.